Okay. I now call the meeting of the Yelm City Planning Commission to order. Today is Monday, July 18th, 2022. Staff, could you take a roll call of attendees, please?
Commissioner Jerry Fugic,
Here.
Commissioner Ann Mormon, Commissioner Stephanie Dunn, Commissioner Carlos Perez,
Here.
Commissioner Bob Howard,
Here.
Commissioner John Graver,
Here.
Commissioner John Thompson.
Here. I would ask that you have hopefully reviewed the minutes from our last meeting. And first, if everybody could stand, we'll do the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Carlos. Now, you have minutes from the last meeting. Please review it, see if there's any additions or corrections. And are there any additions or corrections?
I'd make a motion that we accept the minutes as presented.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
You have to be quick, Stephanie.
Yeah. Would now like to ask if there is for staff communications. I believe we have one.
Yes. Mr. Chair, members of the board, we have a new planning commission member, Stephanie Dunn. She's taking over Floyd Sheldon said. You please introduce yourself and let us know a little bit about your background.
Sure. So my name's Stephanie. We moved here because my husband is active duty stationed at Fort Lewis McChord. And for the last 10 years, I've been volunteering with his units and within the military community. And now we have some small children and we're getting close to retirement. And I've just realized how important your local community is. And so I've decided that I want to get more involved. So here I am.
Welcome.
Thank you.
In the term of an old Navy thing, welcome aboard. So we're really happy to have you, Stephanie, and I think this will add a lot to the good old boy club. But we've got one lady I don't know you've met yet, and very sharp lady.
Fantastic.
So, and you have an excellent staff to work with.
Forward to it.
They work very hard, and I appreciate everything they do. Public. Do you have any other reports that we need to get? Okay. Public communications and comments. One thing you did get is under public comments, the letter here from Mike Edwards. Please review it. And probably will go hear some a little bit more during the public hearing portion of the meeting today.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
That's sorry, that's just for public comment section. That's not related to the public hearing.
Oh, okay, good. Okay. So there are no,
I'm just gonna check if Mr. Edwards is
Yes.
okay. Can you let him speak?
one of the items on people speaking I know down in the legislature and now any other county hearings, you should be able to say what you need to say in 3 minutes. And it takes up most of the time, too much time if people just ramble on. So I'd like to keep the public hearing comments to 3 minutes. Then we can ask questions. That doesn't count in that 3 minutes. So if I have any objections to that philosophy. Okay,
You should be able to talk, Mr. Edwards.
If I'm aboard, you can let me know and I'll talk.
We can hear you now, Mr. Edwards.
All right, good. Well, at the appropriate time, I'll join you with any additional comments a little bit on the written comments that I submitted into you. But you'll have to prompt me if this is the proper time.
You're a little hard to hear. I can understand it, but I'm guessing 90% of people probably can't. I think this is an appropriate time to speak, but if you want us just to read your comments, we can do that for you. And if they have questions, they could ask you.
Yes, if you've had an opportunity to look at the comments, it's self-explanatory, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. I do have a few minor comments after that or questions, but happy to stand by and see if anybody's got a question on the information that I set in, which basically reviews the previous actions of the committee in 2021, July, and gives some forward thinking on whether we should be looking at a rezone for properties within Yelm and what it means. But I'd be happy to address any concerns or any questions.
Has everyone reviewed this?
has everybody reviewed the comments? Are there any questions we need to refer to Mr. Edwards?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Just based off of reading this, it looks like last time there were concerns about the water and the sewage system. I was wondering if anyone has considered the impact on roads and traffic, adding more homes in that area. Would be on Avenue.
Yeah, you might, on the staff, if they were going to be looking, or because this is the comment section, what I would recommend is that and request that you move the question on to your next planning commission meeting on the agenda rather than the public comments, which we're in today. And if you move it forward like that, we'll get into more detail. But again, on water, I would think that we're covered with line capacity, plant capacity. You'll note that the staff has made that notation earlier. And if there are any additional questions at this time, the Planning Commission might ask staff to take a double check on that before now and the August meeting.
Commission, do you have any questions?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, please.
So we made the recommendation that we go ahead and rezone these plots. And so what has the city council?
So I can answer that. Chairman. So the one thing that happened was, in last year, this was still under, when we had two different departments, the CDD group got the recommendation from planning. They decided that they were concerned about rezoning these two properties because they believe they were prime commercial real estate and they didn't want to see them turned into residential. So the actual recommendation never made it to the council meeting. They got shut down in the subcommittee. Just so you know, that subcommittee consisted of 3 council members that are no longer on council.
Okay.
So that's where this ended last year when you guys sent that recommendation to the council, went to the subcommittee and never made it to the council.
Also, I wanted to add something. So I have the minutes of last meeting in September 2021. I highlighted the section that the planning commission made a motion to basically not recommend this. It says exact amendment to the motion by Juan Thompson, seconded by Ann, to send forward the UDC and comprehensive plan amendments as written to city council, with the exception of the commercial to moderate density residential rezone, because there were other rezones last year that was requested from industrial to residential. And continuing that, with the exception of the commercial to moderate density residential rezone, change to high density residential. That's what I believe the planning commission wanted to see last year. The high density residential rezone recommendation is dependent on analysis that shows infrastructure is capable of supporting the rezone. All were in favor. So that's what the planning commission decided last year.
But they did not agree that the sewage and the water and all those other issues were taken care of, and that wasn't going to be a problem anymore.
No, I think it was recommended it was dependent upon the analysis that shows the infrastructure was capable. So we were still waiting for the decision on water and sewer. Was my understanding, since I made the motion, so that it was still outstanding at that time. But until there was a determination on water and sewer, then it would have to be readdressed back to the city council.
Also, they were proposing to rezone from C1 to R6, which is medium density residential.
Yes.
The planning commission wanted to see high density residential there.
They wanted to what?
High
density.
density residential, which is R16.
Yeah.
So they have to go back to the public hearing process again.
Is that on a schedule of any kind?
Well, we can take it back and we can have a public hearing next month. Yeah, I think we can do that. We just have to advertise that so public have a chance to comment on it.
And we should then know by that time, be confirmed of relative to water and sewage capabilities. Because, you know, you change change its code to one thing and say, well, yeah, you don't have water. I understand there is water rights we do have now, but Cody, if you could make sure that we don't do anything stupid.
Yeah, we'll make sure of that. And you are correct. One concerns was water rights for the properties that were coming in, along with the capacity of those water lines, because R16 is a little more demanding than a C1 zone would be. Yeah. Sorry to make sure of that.
Thank you.
Mike's still on, right?
Yes.
So we heard.
Yeah, we can take it back the next planning commission meeting.
Okay.
With, Mr. Edwards.
So we look for a possible hearing at our next.
Yes, if Mr. Edwards decides to move forward.
That's dependent on what he wants to do,
He
whether.
has to apply for rezoning again.
He hearing all of this, does he know what we're saying?
We spoke before, but Mr. Edwards, can you hear us?
Yes, it's not good, but I can hear you. Please let me know if I'm over talking on anybody, because it's a little bit disjointed. Couple of things that I would point out, if you'll see on that first page down at the bottom, the use of residential in that area actually, according to the engineers, draws less than the commercial. So that's point number one. But again, between now and when you meet again at the next planning commission, you might have the staff double check so that a complete comfort for all members is available. And that would answer that question. I would just speak generally overall to the zoning. I don't know what your current zoning provides for. For instance, if you had an R32, does that mean that would be the maximum for that area? And then you could do other than maximum, R6, or lower amounts? Or is that a ceiling amount? Or is that a definitive amount? And the reason I'm asking is, first off, we need to know, but secondly is to also encourage the council to look at flexibility wherever you can. And in this case, I think if your zoning limits the maximum, that protects you from water usage and everything else. Now, if you use less than the maximum in a residential zone, it gives a greater flexibility, for instance, to provide for lower income housing, and it could switch to apartments instead of real heavy concentration. You could be an R16. So if you have your zoning at the top is your maximum that you can utilize at that time. If you keep it open so that you can use less than that, it gives a greater degree of flexibility. And I don't know what your intent or what your requirements are in that regard. That would be one question. It'd be nice to know.
Is the R16 the ceiling, or R14, is that the ceiling of zoning, or is that he has to build that many?
Correct.
Yeah, in an R16, can you build 5 units on that?
We have minimum and maximum allowed density, so it has to meet that.
Did you hear that, Mr. Edwards?
Not really.
There's a minimum and maximum allowed density for each zone. So you have a min and a max.
So if it was zoned, for instance, R16, could you do R6?
Let me check the code.
Minimum is 8.
Minimum is 8.
Yes.
8 is the minimum for R16.
Okay, that is basically half then.
That would be correct. Half of 16 is 8.
Okay, in this case, okay, that would help explain it. Okay. Are you looking overall on your planning to do flexibility to the maximum in your zoning designations? Are you trying to include mixed use? Or you want to be heavily restrictive on what you can and can't do in there? I started to talk with staff a little bit about that, but if you're looking to, for instance, let's take these properties that we're dealing with. If we went to an R16, you're saying then we would be R8 would be the minimum.
Without saying that, yes, we're gonna say that. And Mr. Edwards, this might be a good, if you want to go forward, it might be a good time to meet with planning, our planning group, and talk about these things, because this is kind of bogged down the meeting if we go through every zoning requirement for R16. You want to come in this week sometime and meet with us?
Well, any way that you or your staff would prefer, you bet.
Yeah, let's do that so we don't bog up the meeting anymore, but it sounds like staff or a planning commission is open to having you reapply again for zoning.
Good. And I think from my end today, the main thing, if you want, is to take your official action to take this in as an agenda item in your August meeting, so that by then the staff will know more about the water and any more in-depth questions before you continue it or forward it on to your services committee. I believe it meets on the 26th of this month, though, doesn't it, Cody?
Correct. That is correct.
Yeah. So anyway, if you can get a motion so that it can move forward, we may not have all the questions answered. And if staff would like to meet during the interim period, I can certainly make myself available for more in-depth questions on that. But I think the first thing probably today is to get a motion. Cody, you correct me if I'm wrong, but to get a motion to go ahead and refer it to your services committee on the 26th of this month. And then also to add it in a motion to your August building committee meeting. And if is that correct, let me know.
Yeah, we won't actually need a motion to go to the Public Service Committee. I can just lean on their planning commission's will. If they want to go Public Service Committee, I will bring it to them. What we need, I believe, is a resubmittal from you for a rezone request, and that would get it on the next planning commission. We won't have planning commission take any action since it is a public comment period.
Right.
Yeah, so we'll take it to the Public Service Committee if planning commission wants that to happen, which it looks like from a general nod of yeses. We'll take it to Public Service Committee next week.
Okay.
I don't think is there any other further questions? So if so, then what we will look forward to is that Mr. Edwards contact the city planning, map out what he would like so that they can adjust to have a public hearing if the paperwork has been submitted at our August meeting. Everybody agree on the planning commission on that? Okay, so.
Sounds like a good program to me. That'll give me a chance to explore with the staff and be coordinated on our next meeting.
Yes, so you get that paperwork worked on with the city planning, and then once they get that all taken care of and we request a public hearing, we'll move ahead with that for our August meeting.
I just want to thank the commission for taking the time this morning. It was on a short notice, and hopefully I sped it along a little bit, putting it in writing to clarify the questions, and I'll be sure to spend time with the staff moving forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, with you. So that it's the public comments. Unfinished business. Do we have any unfinished business? New business. We need to elect a vice chair who will take over in January of 2023. I will now accept nominations.
Mr. Chairman, I nominate Carlos Perez.
Do I have a second?
I second.
Okay. Carlos.
I accept.
Okay. We're all waiting. And the train moves on. Do we have any further nominations? Any further nominations? Any further nominations? Hearing none, I believe you can basically, he's got it. Carlos, do you have any comments?
Well, thank you very much for nominating me, John. I appreciate it. I will do my best to be the vice chair.
Well, thank you. So, and in January or in December or whenever our meeting is there, we'll actually need to, Carlos will be moving in January, so he's going to need a vice chair at that time. So we'll need to get somebody elected to do that.
I have someone in mind.
Okay, and it's usually it's supposed to be a 2-year tour. I did a 4. Our next order of business is the update of the Unified Development Codes. And Mariam was kind enough to send out all the hard work as the staff has done. Please review that. And if you have any questions,
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
please.
Where do we find the definition for mixed use?
Good afternoon, councilors, commissioners. Yeah, I will take the questions as far as the package.
I jumped the gun.
You're totally fine, Commissioner, no worries. So we, at some point in the past, then a lot of definitions from our code were actually removed. So we just use a working definition of mixed use, which is basically two or more uses on the same property that are operating at the same time. So typically this is used for residential commercial mixed developments. Less often you see commercial industrial or residential industrial or something like that, but normally it's residential and commercial. So that's the working definition that we use. But we would like to add in something a little bit more formal in a future code update, not today. Any other questions before we start the presentation?
What does 60 feet equate to in storage? 4, 5?
Depending on what the building layout is like, it typically equates to about 5. It could be 4 if the floors are really big. So what you typically see with commercial buildings nowadays is 15-foot first floor, and then 10 to 12-foot additional stories. So 60 feet isn't quite as many stories as you might think, but it would probably average out to about 4, maybe 5 if the floors were a little bit more squashed.
One last question. On the not definition, but I find the short-term parking as 6 months to be a little longer than short-term in my thinking process. To me,
Yeah.
short-term is 3 months or less.
Now, why don't we get to that?
Are you going to be going over all this?
Well,
Okay, we're gonna go each item.
Yeah.
Is that so?
yeah, we can start short-term camping. So we are proposing to add short-term RV camping to the open space zone as a special use. So this is a little bit different than just a regular permitted use. Permitted uses in most zones are things like service-oriented establishments like barber shops or commercial establishments like restaurants. The open space zone doesn't have a lot of permitted uses in it. They're mainly just designed for kind of augmentation of whatever open space is there. Staff has gotten a couple of inquiries about developers interested in adding some short-term RV parking around Longmire Park. So confidentiality reasons, we can't really say more than that, but we have gotten some inquiries about this. So what this would mean is basically an RV park, so not a long-term residential trailer park like you see in some areas around Yelm and County, but it would really just be for people who want to camp in the area for 2 or 3 months, do a lot of hiking around Rainier, see a lot of outdoors and stuff in the area. Would not allow any kind of skirts or permanent fixtures or anything like that on the ground. It would really just be a temporary use. We're definitely open to shortening that time frame. 6 months is definitely just kind of a starting place for us to talk about things. So we have a little skepticism from Commissioner Perez, but so this is pretty straightforward. So we would be adding short-term RV camping as a special use. What special use means is a use that the Planning Commission and the hearing examiner, just the hearing examiner actually, this would not go to Planning Commission. Special uses don't go to Planning Commission, but the hearing examiner would have a lot more latitude and authority to impose things like screening or hours of operation or something like that above and beyond what's already in our code. So if the hearing examiner sees that there's some potential issues with the use, it could go well in an area, it could fit. But if there's potential issues with it, then the hearing examiner would have the authority to impose some conditions. And of course, staff would be looking at that situation as well to recommend any conditions that we thought were appropriate to make sure that it doesn't interfere with surrounding uses.
Maybe I'm confused or strange now. On a short-term RV camping, how does that not become a homeless camp suddenly as more and more RV shows up there? And then as you're trying to remove them, according to the current law in the state of Washington, if that RV is my home and now I'm there. I don't care, you can't move me now. Does this create a location in open space for homeless camps that could grow and we suddenly look like next to the hospital down in Lacey? And how is that addressed, or am I missing something there?
Yeah, that's a really good question. We can certainly look more into how long it takes for people to have squatters' rights on a certain area. My understanding is that it's longer than 6 months, but we can double check on that.
And will we have facilities for them to discharge their sewage, garbage, and everything would be built in those areas?
Yeah, this would, so this isn't a residential.
I understand the purpose of it. I see problems once that happens because of the way the laws are set up, and suddenly we find we can't remove a person. We don't have any way to remove them, and now they are there in that open space, and then people are complaining about drugs and wrecked cars parked and everything else.
Yeah, so this is really intended to be something more like kind of the campgrounds that are out in national forests and things like that, only here in Yelm. So we're addressing all of the waste issues and water issues and things like that. We're working with our engineering department to make sure that that happens. But we can definitely double check on the right. If it's 30 days and then they have squatters' rights, then we would need to reduce that down significantly. My understanding is it's longer than 6 months, but we'll look into that further.
Would there be a fee to park there, or would this be
there would be a fee? It's not a free camping place.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And does Yelm administrate this?
No, this would be a private park.
That's actually better.
This would not be a city thing. Any other questions about this particular amendment?
I do.
Commissioner Gunn?
If it's a private business running, like, would it be up to them to dictate how, because I've seen in the past in other areas that trailers that are so old aren't allowed, or there are other rules in place to keep the facility looking to a certain standard. Would that be up to the business to do that, or would that be up to the city?
Yeah, that would probably be up to the business. We can certainly look at imposing some kinds of regulations on the business owners. We are not to impose regulations where we can get away with that, but yeah, at this point, we probably leave it up to the business, but we're certainly open to suggestions as far as how we could regulate that with a light touch.
I think basically majority of the planning commission has some true concerns about this, and we have to be open to be able to help. A lot of times people are homeless for a reason, and we can want to remove that problem, but we don't want it to look like the area around the hospital. And we make sure that when we say something, we've crossed our T's, dotted our I's, put the period at the end of the sentence so we don't get in trouble. And I know, your heart's in the right place.
Thank you. Okay, well, that's short-term RV camping. Let's talk about next the removing residential housing from commercial zones in the city. So we're proposing some solely residential uses from the CBD central business district, C1 regular commercial, and C2 heavy commercial zones. All of these zones currently allow both single-family residences and single-family attached housing, like duplexes or townhomes or something like that. Obviously, we don't have any kind of bias against single-family detached or attached housing. Those are both things that we need in Yelm right now. But we also want to make sure that we are keeping our commercial land open because we don't have that much of it in Yelm. I didn't come prepared with a huge map showing exactly where our commercial zones are. I could try to pull one up for you, but we don't have that much. And we've been getting some development pressure from investors and developers who want to build individual homes and duplexes in the CBD, C1, and C2 zones. Staff is a little bit concerned about this, so we are proposing to remove those uses from those zones as allowed uses. Existing homes that are there wouldn't be changed. They would just be considered legal non-conforming. So they wouldn't be able to expand their residential use, but they could keep doing it. So this doesn't endanger any residents of Yelm right now. It just makes it so that future development there can only be commercial in nature. Now, the one exception that we've made to this is Commissioner Perez was asking about this, mixed use developments. So that is a combo commercial or residential development. Or, potentially, I'll be honest, in my years as a planner, I've never seen a commercial industrial mixed use development. So really we are talking about residential, commercial right here. That's what people want to do. That's what is being looked at. And the split with that is we allow up to 66% residential, 33% commercial. So what that works out to is people could do ground floor commercial with restaurants and shops, boutiques, things like that, and then have stacked apartments on top of that. So this technically is allowed already in these zones because the apartments use is listed as an allowed use. But we've just taken that to mean in the past apartments as part of a mixed use development. So we're just tweaking the language a little bit to make sure that we're actually getting what we want with mixed use development. Any questions about this item?
We still have it, I didn't read it, but we still have it that portion of the commercial has to be constructed.
That is correct.
Yeah, okay.
That is correct.
Don't hit me. When we were back on the open space, I glanced down when the permitted use, you have an item E, churches, temples, and synagogues, and an item I, churches and places of worship. Aren't those the same?
They
Something-
are churches and
So would one of those be removed, maybe?
we can remove those in a future code update.
I just noticed that and it looked like it was redundant.
No, it absolutely is, Commissioner. We have, I think our code received a major update. 2015 was last time, and it was originally drafted in the mid-90s.
Okay,
So there's a lot of kind of debris that's built up over the years. We are looking at potentially engaging a code consultant, and then just totally rework our code for us with some heavy input from staff. So if we don't get to it in the next few months, then hopefully we'll get to it in the super huge code overhaul
okay.
that we're planning to do. But good catch. Thank you. Any other questions about this?
And is there a, maybe I just missed it, is there a limit to how high these buildings can get?
You are way ahead of us. I'm about to talk about that.
Next.
Okay, so now we are going to talk about the maximum height limit in these zones. So staff is proposing to increase the height limit for buildings in the CBD, C1, and C2 zones from 35 feet to 60 feet. So almost double, which sounds like a lot, huge, gigantic, but as we just talked about, that's going to top out at about 4 stories, maybe 5 stories if the stories are small enough. So we're not talking about gigantic buildings that are going to, tower over Yelm and be skyscrapers. But the reason why staff is bringing this forward is for two reasons. Number one, to facilitate increased commercial development within Yelm. In Lacey, Olympia, a couple other cities that I've worked, Lehi, Utah, and Grand Junction, Colorado. It's pretty standard for your big commercial zones to be anywhere from 60 feet to 80 feet. So 60 feet is kind of the minimum for commercial zones. We potentially, if there are concerns about increasing the height limit in CBD, we could look at potentially having some graduated setbacks for buildings that are abutting residential zones. That's something that we're also looking at as staff. But if we don't increase the height limit to 60 feet, it's going to be a little bit difficult to develop the city's future education and innovation center, which is going to be 3 stories with potentially kind of an open 4th story. We want to make sure that the developers have as much flexibility as possible, and that the city does want to go a little bit higher on the EAC, that we have that flexibility in the future. We see this as a way to encourage increased development, commercial development in Yelm, so that people don't have to drive to Lacey to Costco or something like that, or similar things. A lot of hotels need 60-foot height limits just to get those 4 stories in. A lot of bigger box stores also need that taller height limit as well. So this is why we're proposing it. We're happy to receive any feedback that you might have as far as this goes. This is definitely a starting point for discussion. So any comments or questions?
Well, one of my favorite towns, Centralia. And I think they did it right way back when, and they definitely had solar in 3 stories. And, I think that, for me, it works out fine as long as we have some sort of input on what the fronts are going to look like. I mean, that would be really nice. And then the parking. Those are my 2 issues.
Absolutely. And so we are looking at some different parking solutions for downtown. Something that staff would like to see is a parking garage, so that we don't need to have so much surface level parking, but we can just kind of collect it all on one lot, and people can park there and just walk anywhere around downtown. We would love to see that. So we are absolutely working on those parking issues. So any other questions? Commissioner Graver, did you also say the building design, so how it looks?
Yeah, the front.
Yeah. So CBD already has some pretty significant design standards, just to make sure we don't have any, huts going in downtown. And then we also have some design standards for C1 and C2 zones, not quite as stringent, but they are there. We're certainly open to adding a few more, but there is kind of a basic system right now in the commercial zones, and then a pretty significant menu of development appearance guidelines, facade guidelines.
Could you put together something that shows that sometime? Just so that we know what.
So that we could do that. So next month, especially for Commissioner Dunn, then we are putting together kind of a planning 101 presentation. I think it's been a little while since we've done that here, so we feel like it'd be a good refresher. So we will be adding that to next month's agenda. That's kind of our centerpiece. Assuming all of our amendments go through. If not, then we'll have more to talk about next month. But we are planning to do a planning 101, and as part of that, Commissioner Graver, we're happy to add in just kind of a little breakdown of what controls we do have as far as design standards in the city.
At one of the city council meeting, Cody did a real neat synopsis of the whole planning process. You might want to review that. If you've got that information available. It was
I think
very
Courtney
good.
actually created it for me, so that makes it easy.
Created.
So she walked it out.
Follow that.
Yeah, she did a
Good job.
So.
Very well done.
Yeah, that was one of my proudest moments as a professional woman, so. Okay, any other questions? Commissioner Dunn, please.
concern. I've seen in other small towns that have that wonderful small town feel, that the central business district that turns into the historical part and has this, that feeling that we all move here for. It gets locked in with, what are you calling them? Just the commercial use. And my only concern would be grouping the central business district with the commercial use zone. It might, 10 years down the road, as things progress, we might lose that sense of intimacy of a downtown if you have 3-story plus buildings right over here. And a parking garage
Right over here.
right over here.
No, I mean, we do right now. We have one that's 3 stories, right?
Well, if we continue building that way, that's just a concern of mine. 'Cause
Sure.
I've seen places change.
Understandable. Yeah, so all cities change over time. That's just normal. If cities aren't changing, they're dying. But we're definitely sensitive to those concerns for sure. So something that we already have in place is we have a local historic register where the buildings that are actually considered historic are protected. So they can't be redeveloped. They can't be torn down. They'll be here as long as we keep those protections in place. So those buildings aren't going to change, and they will continue to lend that historic feel to the downtown. So we can certainly look at adding more historic buildings. We're definitely in favor of that. If we find that there's more buildings that we want to preserve, great. So definitely sympathetic, Commissioner Dunn, to those concerns, and we can have more discussions about, excuse me, how to keep that small town feel. So, any other questions? Well, that is my presentation, and thank you all for listening. So now at this point,
Thank you. I think one question we'd like to verify is the one item that we discussed here, the parking of vehicles on private property and things like that. Yeah, the short-term camping and RV. Make sure we don't get ourselves in trouble by saying something and then saying, whoops.
He's getting worried.
Yeah. New York passed a law that nobody could have semi-automatic weapons. And found out from the law they passed, that meant the police couldn't have either. So they had to go back in and change the law. Right now, we have a law that says there could be no rifle salutes on Capitol grounds. Or bringing firearms or like that. Well, we found out the Army can't do an honor salute. So sometimes, all our good intentions bite us. But I really appreciate all your hard work. Public hearings, we hopefully may have one at our next meeting if Mr. Edwards is. Subcommittee reports. John, do you have anything?
No, we haven't had a last month.
And Ann isn't here to bring us up to speed on parks, but does anybody have input on parks at all that has any knowledge of it?
Blank stairs.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
would you like to open the public hearing because there is a public hearing scheduled for today?
Okay. There to public hearing. Today is Monday, July 18th, 2022. I open the Yelm Planning Commission public hearing at 4:48. Today's hearing is on the proposed code amendment.
We just presented that.
Okay. We just presented that, okay, do we need a motion to accept it with the one exception?
We're opening up the public hearing, right?
Yes.
Is there anybody here who would like to? Yeah.
There's nobody.
We've been hearing none, but we had an excellent presentation by London. So I would, at the close of this public hearing, make a motion on that. Hearing no further information on the public hearing, I will close the public hearing at 4:49. Thank you. And is there a motion relative to the change in the code?
Do we need a motion to,
Well, we should, I guess.
Are we ready to make a motion? I mean,
We're out of the public hearing, so now we
no, I
can.
get that. I'm just saying that we got everything. Right now, are we making a motion that we just agree to all this?
No, with the exception of the issue of the short-term camping. And which is 1840-030 H and 1840-40 E. Make sure that they're on the last page.
The proper way would be to make a motion for the current one, a second, and then amend the current motion on the table to remove the two that you don't, or if there's anything you don't want to vote on, that would be the proper way to do it.
Okay.
So motion second, if it's.
You have 3 items we're addressing, right?
The uniform code updates, there's 3 on there, yes. If you wanted to remove one or change one or take one off, then you would do it at that point after the motion has been made to.
Okay, we make a motion to accept the change.
Well, I make a motion that we accept the changes for item 2 and item 3, increasing the height limit and removing single-family detached and attached housings. So those items, I make a move that we accept those.
Make a motion to accept all of them, but then the motion will be amended.
Amend it, that's the better way.
That's correct. That'll be much cleaner.
All right, I'll make a motion that we accept all 3 at this time.
Ed, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, now we have a motion to amend that motion to, I believe, remove those last 2 items.
No, just
no,
the first one.
I make a motion, let me say it this way. I make a motion that we amend our previous motion to redefine short-term RV camping.
Redefine, is that it?
I would
Do you want to take it off or do you want us just to tell you more about it?
Well, I thought we were going to. Well, I guess if we take it off, then how, somewhere along the line, it has to be defined.
Yeah, we can go back and define it and bring it to you again.
I didn't bring it, okay.
If it's taken off.
We eliminate
Yes.
adding the short-term RV camping as an allowed use in open space zone.
At this time.
The amendment, does the amendment have a second?
Okay. Now I need a second.
I second.
Okay, all in favor, signify.
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Now we will vote on the amended motion.
We voted on the amendment, now the motion's amended.
Okay.
Now we're on the amended motion.
Okay, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right.
Carry.
Thank you, Cody.
No problem, I got you.
I'm gonna have to get my Robert.
That's why we have all you there, so we don't do anything stupid.
I know.
5 years.
Yeah.
Okay. At this time, is there any other input from the commissioners?
There was one thing I wanted to ask because I'm not sure if we really ever decided anything on it or we just tabled it, but we had originally started talking one time about improving that alleyway that's over behind right over here, actually, you know. And the only reason I bring it up is because there's a possibility that I might be able to get some funds from the realtors to put together a committee or to address that. You know what I'm talking about? We talked about making a walkway through,
Oh, yeah, right over here.
actually over here.
Oh, over there, okay.
Yeah, behind the bars. there.
Yeah.
And allowing access to the back of those buildings,
Yeah,
or, I mean, even if they want to put coffee stand, or,
Yeah.
I mean, those kind of things. And so I didn't know if that's still something people are interested at all, because I don't want to go to the realtors and then find out it doesn't make any difference.
No, I mean, I can address that.
Yeah.
I was here for that. So as you mentioned, it's a vision plan that was created to create an activated alleyway and turn this into a one-way and then a one-way over there to manage the traffic. That is totally still in the works. And I think if there's funding or a group that you have that wants to start working on that, the city would be open to that. I think with the other improvements you guys are voting on for the central business district, I think that makes sense to start working on those things as well, at the same time, so.
So Cody, since you brought that up,
Surprise.
my pet peeve is the left turn on Second.
Yes.
People trying to say that they're turning on Second, but they're not.
And they just
They're
go through.
waiting to turn on First. And that really bugs me because it's happened to me twice already. You go in this outer lane, go to turn on the First, and this guy here then sees the light change and zips up.
Mhm.
And if you're not watching and you're not careful, you're gonna get side swapped there.
Yeah.
So what, and we had, I know that there's the issue with the one-way street over there and shutting that down and not allowing a left-hand turn lane. How is that progressing, or is that even in the works yet?
Yeah, so all of the improvements we're doing, that's part of the works is these one lanes and then changing that Second Street turn. I can give you, if you want to have a little yellow crossing guard, you can stand on there for a bit if you want. But you don't have to do that. No, but that's all in the works. Yes, 100% in the works to get all of that happening in the CBD area. The CBD is the big focus for London and planning team right now to kind of make it a downtown area that's walkable, because that's the whole goal, right? You want the central business district to be a walkable, livable downtown. Increasing the height limit will now allow apartments to go. People could literally live in their apartment, work downstairs, walk and get food, get their groceries, walk back, and never have to get in their car. That's the whole idea with the CBD, is that's what you want it to be. So we're doing those things to improve that. You guys just voted on some of those. Thank you so much for that. And then the other thing will be the activated alleyway. So there is walking room, or someone could park on the outskirts and just walk through and not have to drive in and park next to a business. So yes, that is in the works. That's a little longer time frame than the activated alleyway, but that activated alleyway directly links to that. So
Thank you very much.
good on you.
So to answer your question, please.
Sure does.
Okay.
All right.
Any other comments from the planning commission? Any comment from staff? Any comment from the city commission?
I got
notes we'll talk in committee about. That's next Tuesday.
Oh, okay.
I'll need some stuff back.
Um, If there are none, then I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you.